What is up, guys? You already know what it is. Thank you for tuning in today. Very exciting times in Dead by Daylight. My goodness, I don't know how many times I watched that trailer yesterday when it came out for the big FNAF reveal into Dead by Daylight with Mr. Springtrap himself. Absolutely amazing community. Honestly, brought me back to the times of when Nemesis was released. Just goosebumps after goosebumps watching that trailer, man. And the audience reaction was absolutely insane. Literally forced my girlfriend multiple times to watch the trailer, even though she does not play Dead by Daylight at all. But she does like Matthew Lillard. Anyways, enough introduction from me. Today we're going to be talking about potential powers for Mr. Springtrap that are lore accurate. We're going to be assessing the level of fun for both sides. I'm playing completely crap as Billy right now because I'm just too excited to be announcing this to you guys if this is the first time that you're hearing about Springtrap coming into Dead by Daylight. And the last criteria that we're going to be thinking about is the ability to we're going to be splitting it into three parts. So his map control ability, his any potential slowdown, as well as his anti-loop, which a lot of people are thinking that he's going to be a stealth and kind of chase killer in combination, and I think that's a good approach for behavior to take. You don't want to make the killer too complex for all the new players that are going to be coming in, but at the same time, you don't want to just simply make him like a knockoff Singularity or a knockoff Myers or anything like that, right? So without further ado, let's get right into it. If you guys are enjoying this, thank you so much for all of the support on my most recent videos. The tremendous amount of support, almost at 400 whole subscribers. I really do truly appreciate that from all of you. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So the first aspect we're going to be talking about is his potential map control. Now, in the games, as you all know, Springtrap uses his ventilation shafts to traverse the map. Now, the rather boring suggestion I've been hearing around the community would be that, similar to Xenomorph, the Springtrap has a set and fixed amount of ventilation shafts that he could traverse throughout the map at fixed locations. I personally think that's a bit of a boring suggestion, and I wouldn't really want them to go that route necessarily, where Springtrap can just go into a ventilation and pop up at another side of the map. But we will get into a bit of an expansion on that, still using ventilations in our next point. Now, rather than ventilation, as we saw in the trailer, Springtrap was invisible for a short amount of time. Now, what I personally think is going to happen, or somewhat relate to his power, is the survivors are going to have to set up cameras around the map. Now, not only is this going to be lore accurate, but in terms of lethality, it will be quite nice because I'm just spitballing here, but I think that if a survivor sets up a camera around the map at a strategic location, they would have to constantly monitor Springtrap through those cameras. If they didn't monitor him through those cameras, and this will tie into a bit of his slowdown, maybe they build this kind of stress or fear meter where Springtrap's power essentially gets stronger and stronger the longer that survivors don't keep track of him, kind of similar to Oniro, where you have to juggle around the tapes, but in this case you don't actively have to do anything other than just simply look at him like in the games. Now, if survivors don't look at him, where his map control comes in is he might get some sort of speed increase, or similar to Houndmaster, where she could draw a line to you and then kind of traverse that line and go faster. What Springtrap might be able to do, and it will be rather straightforward and simple for new survivors, is when survivors don't look at Springtrap for a certain duration, the longer they don't monitor him, the faster and more lethal he becomes in terms of his map control and map pressure. Because when you don't really know where Springtrap is, he could essentially be anywhere at any time. As you know, in the game, as the nights progress, he gets more and more lethal, and that could be alluded to in Dead by Daylight via the survivors not looking at the cameras that they've set up around the map, or if they're just fixed locations. But regardless, if they don't look at the cameras for a certain duration, the Springtrap will essentially grow in power, and maybe this means that he gets a speed increase to be able to go to you wherever you are on the map. Maybe he gets some sort of killer aura, and he also has some sort of invisibility mechanic. Now, wrapping up his potential map control ability would be his ability to potentially teleport to survivors survivors, as we did see in the trailer. Now this could tie into, again, not looking at him on the monitors or the cameras for a certain duration. Then he builds up some sort of teleport meter, and then he could teleport to within your vicinity, similar to the Singularity, or similar to who's that other killer that just came out recently? Freddy. They did a rework on Freddy, some sort of similar mechanic to that. I think that would be really cool. Lastly would be his hallucinations, potential hallucinations around the map. Now this wouldn't work very similarly, this wouldn't work identical to the Unknown's power where he just shits out hallucinations around the map. I think they would kind of implement it with this sort of surveillance and camera power, which I definitely think is going to be possible. As seen in the trailer, we're kind of looking through the perspective of a camera, which is really cool. And in terms of fun for both sides, I think that this whole camera dynamic and having to keep your eyes on Springtrap and even coordinate with your team when you're in a Swift, I think that will be very fun and engaging for both sides, simply talking about his map control ability. And for Springtrap himself, you would want to, I don't know, maybe he somehow disables those cameras, similar to in the game, where you have to keep track of which cameras aren't disabled. And this, I believe there was battery. It's been a while. Five Nights at Freddy's came out at least like 14 years ago, and I was like still a child, so I don't know, but I know you had to kind of monitor the camera's battery life and see if they're still on, because Springtrap or Freddy or whomever could turn them off with their demon powers, their demon mind control. If you guys are enjoying this video, please consider liking and subscribing, as it really does help my channel out and I would truly appreciate it. Moving on to everyone's favorite anti-loop. Now I really hope that they implement some sort of very fun anti-loop mechanic into Springtrap's power, because it would be very unfortunate if a bunch of new players came in and then they had to kind of play this kind of stealth slash trap killer. Nothing wrong with stealth and trap killers. However, the most fun killers in Dead by Daylight are the killers with the best anti-loop that could basically apply pressure in chase, where the survivor has to dodge them strategically and the killer has to use their power to catch them around loops. That is always the most fun anti-loop power. The first candidate from this is something floating around the community with my own little twist on it, would be some sort of arson power or fire power around loops. So essentially, when survivors are in chase with Springtrap, so how now he's in chase with them, he's gotten to them through whatever map control power he has, whether that be speed, teleportation, or simple ventilation travel. He is now in chase in the loop with a survivor. Now maybe since in FNAF 3 he could kind of light flyers around certain areas in certain locations, maybe around a loop he could have some sort of projection of a fire. It's always good to have some sort of mechanically diverse power in chase to help with anti-loop, because it's fun for both survivors and killers. To make it lore accurate and lethal, he can maybe ignite certain areas of a loop, maybe pallets or windows, or project some sort of fire. A more interesting power for anti-loop that I'm thinking about would be some sort of haste when he's out of sight. So now think of a jungle gym, right? A jungle gym, you can't always see the survivor and killer at all areas. Now think about it like this. What if around a loop, if you don't see Springtrap for a long amount of time, so for a certain duration of time, and you are in chase with him, right? That's the condition. You have to be in chase with him and you don't see him around a loop for, let's say, 3 or 4 seconds. Then he gains some sort of crazy haste bonus, right? So it's essentially like a jump scare, right? You're going towards the window in the jungle gym and then he gets this crazy speed boost and basically catches right up to you because you don't see him for 3 or 4 seconds, and then boom, pretty much jump scare. Lore accurate, lethal, and good for hits, not too busted, and could and for both sides you could basically outplay it by knowing that he's going to get this speed boost and then play it accordingly, whether that be faking a window, faking a pallet, or going somewhere else. Now another very interesting one that I don't think I've heard from anyone, this is just my spitball idea, is he might have some sort of sound hallucination or distraction. That is a very prevalent aspect in all of the FNAF games, to have some sort of audio distortion and hallucination where the survivor doesn't really know if Springtrap's there or where he's coming from. They can't pinpoint his exact location if they lose line of sight from him. This could also tie into the surveillance cameras for the survivors to see where he is in the loop, maybe quickly switch to it, or however the surveillance cameras will work. But essentially, when the Springtrap is out of sight, maybe some sort of sound distortions or hallucinations will occur to basically throw off survivors' location of Springtrap in the loop. So I think that would be a very interesting idea if they made Springtrap so that in the loop you actually want to be stealthy. I don't think that's ever really been done, right? With Michael Myers, you're kind of just standing from a distance and you're hiding behind something, but it doesn't really help you in a loop. Whereas I think with Springtrap's power, what they could do is make it so that him being able to be out of sight in a loop actually plays into his advantage of building up his stress meter or fear meter or whatever you want to call it, and he basically gets some sort of buffs off that, whether that be haste, whether that be teleportation in a loop. Now that would be kind of nurse and OP, but they could do something with that, you know, some sort of teleportation mid loop, or some sort of sound distortion, sound hallucination to basically throw off the survivor. I think a combination of all of those aspects, basing it off the survivor not being able to see him in a loop, and that basically increasing his power and lethality in the loop. It wouldn't be a direct anti-loop, but it would still be an anti-loop such that he could use his M1 power as soon as his fear meter or stress meter builds up, and then he gets these benefits and these buffs to help him around his anti-loop, and then he essentially uses his M1. Good lore accuracy. It's fun for both sides, where you want to always keep your eyes on Springtrap, and the lethality would be there as well, because of course, as I mentioned in my previous video, it looks like they're going towards a killer design of getting it injured with some sort of power and then being able to M1 with just your basic attack around powers when that survivor is injured. If you guys are enjoying this video, please consider liking and subscribing, as it really does help my channel out and I would truly appreciate it. Lastly, we're going to be talking about his potential slowdown if he was to have any instilled in his base kit. Now, as we've said before, there will probably be some sort of stress effect or fear effect that builds up, and survivors will essentially have to get rid of this via looking at him through a camera, as that's in the games how you basically defeat any animatronic. You got to constantly monitor them or they're going to jump scare the shit out of you. Another thing would be some sort of spring lock trap. So similar to the pigs traps, Springtrap may be able to put on some sort of spring lock mechanism onto you, similar to the lore accuracy in the FNAF games. I don't really know how this would work. I don't think it would have been, it should be just a copy and paste of pigs traps, where he just places it on you when you're on the floor. But somehow being able to get you in a spring lock trap, maybe they could add some sort of a risk to reward to it. So when you're setting up a camera, if you mess up on something or he catches you while you're looking at him, you get some sort of spring lock trap or something. You know, they could play around with some sort of spring lock trap, which then you have to get off, and that's kind of a side objective that you have to worry about, which again, in the overall picture would slow down the game, because then you would be focused on that side objective rather than the main objective, which is doing generators. And lastly, his built-in slowdown for just setting up these cameras if they're not in fixed locations already, similar to Xenomorph's turret traps, where you have to go and get them and then place them in strategic areas. This would be a built-in sort of slowdown mechanic that could be used towards Springtrap's advantage and lethality, because the survivors would need to waste time thinking and getting the surveillance cameras and setting them up in strategic spots, and maybe even mid-chase, as we've mentioned in our previous segments. You would have to use that kind of camera and maybe monitor it, and maybe the battery life goes down and you have to upkeep it. There's a lot of things he could do in terms of built-in slowdown, and I am very prosperous for this chapter. I think this is going to be probably one of Dead by Daylight's biggest chapters ever, second to Resident Evil, or even first biggest chapter ever, because of all the teenagers and all the young adults that are going to come into it that have played the game when they were children. You know, I started playing FNAF when I was about 12, 13, and it's actually crazy to think about it. That was that long ago, and that all of these characters from horror are merging into Dead by Daylight. It's absolutely amazing to see, and I hope they continue to add more licenses, and I hope this really just becomes the Hall of Fame for horror characters for time to come. All right, guys, I hope you very much enjoyed that. That's all I got for you today. If you did enjoy my content, please consider liking and subscribing and or commenting, as it really does help my channel grow. I really do appreciate every single 381 of you subscribers for supporting my channel. I hope this channel continues to grow, and that's pretty much it. Take care.